right, guys. Hello. Good afternoon. Thank you so much for being here. We're going to go ahead and get started. So today we have Jonathan Yarkoni to speak about increasing your operational efficiency with custom GPTs. Jonathan comes from a software engineering background and over the last 7 years has been a leading figure in the field of artificial intelligence, working at Google and IronSource. He is a sought after public speaker, having delivered keynote talks at the Future of AI and the Google Cloud Summit. And prior to co-founding Latent, he spent 6 years leading AI and machine learning projects at Google, as well as collaborating with major enterprise organizations. So we're very lucky to have him here today. Everyone, please welcome Jonathan.
To be here. Just let me know that you can hear me.
All good.
We're good? Can you hear me, guys? Just making
Yes,
sure
we can hear you.
Yeah, okay. Great. So super excited to be here. Thank you for the great intro. I'm Jonathan. I've been doing AI for the better part of the past 7 years, initially at Google, and in the past 2 years at my own firm, which is Latent AI. Today, I'm going to be talking about operational efficiency, specifically through the lens of ChatGPT, and where any organization can and should leverage it as a first step. Let me start out by presenting my screen. My plan is to go through a deck. Then I'll jump over and show a couple of demos. I'll urge you to kind of ask me questions as we go along, and definitely we'll leave a small section at the end to have some Q&A. I'll kick it off by sharing my screen. So, very, very happy to be here. Latent has been operating for 2 years. We do generative AI projects. We also do training. This is coincidentally one of these training workshops that we do. And I think it offers a lot of value to spread the word when it comes to leveraging custom GPTs. I don't think they're being used enough, and I'll try to make this point today that they're A, not being used enough, and B, what you can actually do and how you can actually leverage them starting tomorrow. Everything I say here is kind of lessons learned from working with big customers on generative AI projects in the past 2 years. I say this because there are a lot of people that talk about generative AI, and I always like to state that everything we say or recommend in these sessions is something that we know has worked because we've seen it in a customer, we've worked on it in a project, and we try to always focus on the value at the end of the day. Generative AI is everywhere. We all know this from ChatGPT. We all read the newspaper. Some of you must probably also read Gartner and McKinsey reports. By the end of 2026, more than 80% of enterprises will have used generative AI in some way, shape, or form in every function. I think it's an imperative to look at this statistic and ask yourself, like, what you as an individual are leveraging, how you as an individual are leveraging, and more importantly, like, how is the company leveraging it? There's quite a bit of fear mongering going on, like, it's a do or die moment for companies. And to some extent, I do believe this. I think we're not going to go towards like mass layoffs, as some people might advocate. I just think that some companies' throughput is going to increase by a large factor, and it's just going to create competition that is unmatched. So I think the choice is becoming a high throughput company or staying companies as they are today. In terms of adoption, so if you're already using ChatGPT today, kudos on you. I think that's kind of the must. Leveraging the technology, there's a lot of things that we know from our personal life that can be done with ChatGPT. There's also a lot that can be done in the work space. I'll definitely show a couple of demos later down the line of things that I use in order to make my day to day more efficient. That's kind of the level one. And I think in terms of productivity use, if you're already using ChatGPT, you're getting some kind of efficiency. I'm gonna say it's probably sub 5%. Uh, the second level is the level that I'll focus on today, which is building custom GPTs. This is already focused. I'll define exactly what focus means, but generally speaking, it's a process that A leverages ChatGPT and B is aware of an objective that you're trying to achieve. Whether you're trying to create a report, whether you're trying to review a contract, making the system be aware in advance of what your objective or goal is highly crucial. There are obviously higher levels of adoption, and you can create AI assistants as part of the core product. But today we're going to focus on the custom GPTs for two reasons. First of all, they're not that hard to adopt. Second of all, there's a lot of functions in the organization, HR, legal, marketing, basically, in my opinion, all the non-R&D functions, which could highly benefit from this, but most people have not done this so far. Um, I think there's a seismic shift going on, and for the first time in a long while, there's a new definition around. I think a lot of people say this like AI first. I want to be an AI first company. What it means to me is the following. Fundamentally, we're moving from a world where we were generating everything and also validating it to a place where agents are going to be doing the work and we're going to be supervising the work. I'm not saying this is the world we live in today. I think it's going to be a gradual shift over time. And I think that custom GPTs are the first step in that direction. They're not going to be doing all of our work. Anybody who's been following along, I said at best it's around 10% right now. But it's going to get more and more into that framework of we're going to have agents who are doing the work for us and we're going to be supervising. There's a lot of kind of things that I think a business should take into account if this vision is true, which I very much think it is. We're gonna be employing more critical thinking, more less predefined knowledge, and a couple of other things. What has changed? Like, why am I talking about ChatGPT? Why do I think that there's so much value to be had by using the system more? ChatGPT is great because, amongst other things, it is able to do something that wasn't possible just over 2 years ago. It can be leveraged to do minor decision making instead of humans. Uh, Up until today, if you wanted to have a system do a sorry make a decision instead of a human, generate a logical thinking path and make a decision, it was impossible. I'm not saying that ChatGPT can do anything. There are certainly limits to what it can do, but definitely minor decision making, if it's well defined, can be delegated to the systems. I said this before, and I'll reiterate this. We're moving from a world where we're generating to a world that we're slowly more and more doing verification. I love the example of creating documents. Creating documents was hard for some people more than others. I'm going to put myself as those who struggled more with creating long and comprehensive documents. And again, I'll say I think that is one of these things that is gradually becoming easier. I We at Latent, we did an invoice automation project with a customer, and that customer was working on AWS, and it was great. Then there came another customer, and they were working with Microsoft, which is also great. It was a very similar project, and I already knew how the scope of work should look. But the architecture and the deliverables and a couple of other things weren't exactly the same. Using ChatGPT, I was able to transform the document in less than 10 minutes. Really, all I had to do was ask the system to change it, and then I really needed to verify the document, see that some mistakes didn't happen. Uh, Other things that have changed is that remote work is becoming more acceptable, and that things are becoming more measurable. I'm not going to go into like what exactly is becoming more measurable, but the system definitely enables us to measure more functions in the organizations than we were previously able. I think up until today, it was very easy to measure R&D functions, and now slowly and slowly, we're going to be able to measure other parts of the organization. It, I want to skim over what we can do with this technology just to make sure that everybody's on the same page here. We can leverage generative AI or generative AI like technology to build all kind of different systems, from productivity to search to content creation systems to AI assistants. There are many examples for the varied systems. We can look at a general scope, as you can see here, but you can also look at it from an industry specific. So here are some examples from the medical industry, a clinical support system, and all the way to an AI assistant that either aids or replaces a secretary, aids or replaces a GM in charge of regulation and compliance, and many, many more things. Some use cases that I find interesting that we've worked on in the past. So the first one is AI assistant for regulation and compliance. We see this many times in enterprise customers, and they want to undergo projects, and in order to undertake that project, they have to figure out what compliance and regulation is required. Normally, there's a general secretary in the organization, there's a ticketing system, and it takes around 2 or so weeks to get an answer. What we did is built a system or an AI assistant, which is basically a custom GPT on steroids, that takes into account various different things, such as different systems in the organization, the rule set on how to handle the different tickets, all of the historical tickets, and obviously the compliance document to rely on. And we were able to create this assistant that at the end of the day generates an accelerated report, which is validated and also has a formatted output. There's no reason to just do things for the sake of doing them. I think that every project, every undertaking that employs Gen AI should have, first of all, a KPI attached to it. And I think as a general KPI, these three are very important. If we're not accelerating, we're not bringing value. If it's unvalidated, we're putting the organization at risk. And if it's not formatted, it makes it makes it very hard to to repeatedly consume the automation. At the end of the day, custom GPT is a new type of automation which is readily available. But I would argue that if you don't make sure you're getting these accelerated, validated, and formatted output, uh, you're not going to see sustained usage. And if you're not going to see sustained usage, you're not going to be getting that value. We were able to reduce the time from 2 weeks per ticket to 2 days, which I think is great. It's almost by a factor of 10, which is amazing. Um, Another example is an AI assistant that enables chat with data. Here, the challenge was that the company OpMed, which what they do is they help people manage operational rooms in hospitals. Interacting with the database is rather complex and requires knowledge of things such as SQL. What we built is a system that allows to interact with that database in a free text manner. So again, this is very similar to the system that you saw before. Also in chat, this time with a different input and sort of like a different output. This time it relied on database, rules, and FAQ. And it was able to generate things such as insights, graphs, and obviously things which are important to running an operation room, which is a schedule for creation. At the end of the day, I'm trying to convince you that if you change your mindset, I mean, assuming that you're not already a heavy user of custom GPT, some of you may definitely already be using it. In that case, I guess I'm preaching to the choir. Assuming you're not, which is what we're seeing with most organizations across the board. I'm trying to convince you. So this is just a subset of tasks that I've automated with a custom GPT like agents, and I'll just kind of skim through them. At the end of the day, I do a lot of these tasks repetitively. I check my email, I quick send some reminders, I check various dashboards to see, are we on track? Do I need to talk to somebody? Are there any problems in any system? I check the bank account to see whether we were transferred money that were owed, or just to make sure that things are, okay in terms of cash flow. I definitely schedule a couple of meetings, internal and externals. I probably reschedule some meetings to clear my calendars and reset priorities, and so on and so forth. And the list is long, and in reality, it's even longer. Um, Internally, we're working towards a reverse vision where it's great if you can trigger these custom GPTs. I think it's even greater if you wake up in the morning and they give you an update. And that, I think, is the holy grail for 2025. If you know you're going to be doing a lot of these things repetitively, just imagine a world where everybody has a assistant or an agent that works at zero time and zero effort and can continuously check these things and do, again, things that require minor decision making. If I'm drawing back on a couple of slides previous, that I think is the ultimate goal. Instead of going through these 15 different tasks that I have listed here, I wake up in the morning and all of my custom GPTs or agent have already run in the background, and I'm getting a succinct update and only drilling into where I'm really needed. Now, this is kind of a side note, just so that I don't give you kind of this false premise. Any interaction with the ChatGPT, you probably heard it in the past, is called prompting, and the art of creating the right prompt, so to speak, is called prompt engineering. This is not a talk about prompt engineering, and I won't go at length what prompt engineering is or how to do it. I just have 2 slides. The first one is try and convince you that it it's it's a thing you want to do, you want to get right. The same way that you join an organization, and again, I'll draw on my own experience. When I first joined the industry 15 years ago, I wasn't the best at written communication, and my emails weren't always pitch perfect. And I had to learn over time how to structure the mail so that I'm getting the right point across, and reducing friction, or reducing kind of this ping pong between me. And back then, when I was an engineer, it was mostly with the product manager, the team lead, or the design studio. When you're writing prompts, which you're going to need if you're going to be creating these custom GPTs, just be aware that any word can really affect. Here, I'm showing the example of current, which can either be current electric, it could be current C, it could be current times. But if I, and try this later, maybe we'll try it together in a moment when I open ChatGPT. If I write current, it's liable to talk about any of these, electric or C. I don't know. It's kind of a toss of the coin. But if I write electric, the likelihood that it will talk about currents of the C damn near goes to zero. And the reverse is also true. If I write current C, I'm also probably never going to be um, getting a completion that is about electric current. And at the end of the day, there's really a subset of answers that I consider to be correct. Or if any of you have previously heard like the term hallucinations, that the model lie and they hallucinate a lot, this is kind of a simple representation of why and how and what it exactly means. Anything that isn't what I wanted it to talk about, that isn't marked in red, that isn't kind of off the path of currency, is basically a what's considered a hallucination. This is a simple example, but it's just as important, if not more important, when we're engineering really long prompts and when we're working with custom GPTs. A side note, I've been working on various AI projects for the past 2 years, uh, and getting the perfect prompt isn't easy. I, honest to God, 2 days ago, over the weekend, I really wanted a specific custom GPT that interacts with an internal system that we had, and I hooked it up to an API, started engineering the prompt, and and it took me an hour and a half until I got it right. And I'm a good prompt engineer and I have experience with the systems and I understand how they work. It's not just, oh, I want to do something and now it works. It takes some finessing. It's a trial and error process, and you should treat it as one and not be deterred. There are definitely different levels for prompting. There is a foundational level, there are optimization techniques, there are definitely advanced prompt engineering techniques. There are more and more of those discovered. I'm not going to go over the different levels now. That is a different talk, so to speak. I just want to share with you kind of the foundational ones, because I think this is the bare bone essentials if you're gonna be going home, which I hope you do. Like those of you who are not using, again, I assume some of you are. Those of you who are not, but might be convinced and go home and try to engineer custom GPTs. This is the basic that you require. So there's the acronym here of respect. Very briefly, um, you have to define a role. This can be anything, any job that you want the system to try and behave like. It can be you're a historian, you're a creative writer, you're an analyst, you're a mathematician. The point in case here is that you're trying to very rapidly, by only using a one word like role, capture a certain behavior towards problem solving that you expect of the system. If you tell it that it is a rapper, you're going to get very concise, kind of rhyming answers. If you're going to tell it that it's a mathematician, you're going to be getting a very logical response, probably steps following steps and the logic in between them. Other things are examples, which are super important because the model learns from these examples and tries to answer accordingly. Structure, again, very important. And I'm not going to go through these because, again, prompt engineering is in and of itself a session. But I do advise that at the minimum, you try and adhere to this framework. And there are also many good videos online on how to better prompt engineer. ChatGPT. This is what we've been heading towards. First of all, it's amazing. It's a great tool. It's continuously being updated. I don't have this slide here, but I love showcasing how good we're continuously getting, and specifically from January until now, which is just under 5 months, we've gone in the world of specifically code models. We've gone from 50% accuracy to 83% accuracy. That's almost a 50% increase in that domain. And another thing to add, which I know a lot of people are either doing or thinking of implementing AI in their systems or internally in the organization, we've also reduced the cost there from $100 to just $6. So Gemini 2.5 reaches 73% accuracy on the benchmark that I'm quoting off the top of my head, and it's doing it with a tenth of the cost of the best model, which is OpenAI's O3. ChatGPT has a lot of features in it, which I do recommend leveraging. Just working with no search, there's search and deep research, there are memories, and there's also custom GPTs. I will show at least search and deep research before I jump to GPT. So, first of all, this is as you all know, ChatGPT. There's the free version and then there's the paid version. There are a couple of different licenses for it. I believe, if I remember correctly, it's $25 for every user. On the top left, you'll see various different models. The one you'll probably be using most is GPT 4.1 mini. There are two types of models. Uh, there's the ones with the numbers, and there's the ones that start with O. If you can see, if you're sitting close enough to the screen, the O models are considered reasoning models, and they're more powerful, but they're also much slower. And you could have probably guessed it, uh, and also says it. 4.1 mini is for everyday tasks because it runs faster, and the O family is for the more complicated tasks. If you happen to run, you can also switch between them and so on. If I just ask the model something, so how high is the Statue of Liberty? I use the thinking model unintentionally. So as you can see, it stopped in thinking and giving me an answer. I didn't need to use the thinking model for this one. You can see it already answers. So we're gonna stop it. I can switch a model, tell it to run again with a different one. And this one is much faster. It's the same answer. It's great. I didn't need a reasoning model in order to solve this. Now, if I asked who is the who is uh, the United States, I shouldn't have used the. Sorry, I have to switch it here. now you can see it's already triggering web search. You can also let it know that you want it to web search. My hopes was it was actually many times it says I don't know because I'm not up to date. I'm not connected to the internet. And in order to connect it to the internet, you can enable it here. We'll get to ChatGPT in a second, and we'll enable it there. It's a very important capability. It's add a lot of power. One thing I want to show if we're already here is deep research. Deep research is a capability that you can see here. It's only available for paid users, and even for paid users, it's limited to I think it's 30 times for every paid subscription month. This is very powerful. It's a level above the thinking models. It uses the thinking models, but it has a whole process in the background, and it's able to create really, really detailed reports. Should I invest in Tesla? And I should have asked this kind of question before with one of the small models and not the deep research, because the small models I would have just gone and answer. Here, it's first of all figuring out what I'm trying to do, and it asks me all kinds of questions. So, like I'll say, 10 years, high risk, mix, and no. And now what happens is it's gonna think a bit more, and it's gonna start doing research. This is gonna take between 15 to 30 minutes. And we're not going to wait for this right now. I do recommend you try it later. It's going to give me a very, very detailed, comprehensive report, uh, which you can leverage internally. When I think about strategy in the company or what direction I want to go, I definitely have in the past leveraged deep research. Great. Now, as you can see on the left, there's all kinds of like icons. Like there's a PowerPoint creator, there's a Optimove FAQ, LinkedIn post, and several others. And these are all kind of above the Explore GPTs. If I go here, you'll see that first of all, there are a lot of off-the-shelf custom GPTs that I can use. So you'll see there's one from Wolfram Alpha. There's a very nice one that was recently released by Canva. Many, many more. And the interesting part is, first of all, seeing my GPTs. I have quite a few. And then we'll discuss how you can create your own GPT. So here you can see the many different GPTs that I've created for myself. Anything from something that helps me create a really polished LinkedIn post to something that helps me compare between documents to something that helps our HR filter out CVs. One really cool thing, which I didn't plan to mention, but many times if I know somebody within the organization needs something, I can just author and give them the ChatGPT. In order to create a ChatGPT, all I have to do is press here, and then I can do one or two. Either I can straight up configure it through prompting, okay? And here I can say LinkedIn post generator, you help user create posts, and then I can simply paste in I can paste in. Oh, 1 second, lost the tab. Yeah, so here I can just paste it in. Let's say I'm just taking one that I already have, and I just paste it in. It's a very kind of long prompt that I've pre-authored. And here it's kind of thinking, and I can, test it. That's great. Now I actually want to show you some of the ones that I use in reality. So this is a post, and I can simply uh, share. So I can just tell it, write a post about agent to agent framework recently released released by Google. And it's immediately searching the web, finding information, formulating a post, and going kind of through the motions of what I've defined it to do. And I've given it all kinds of instructions. Okay. And I can say, this is great. Now it's creating an image. Okay. I didn't tell it to create an image. What I did in the background is I gave it instructions. And let's see some of the instructions that I gave. So I'm just going to make this a bit bigger so you see. I've given it a task, and in the task, I've told it that it is you are a technical writer. I'm leveraging the role from what we saw in the beginning. I explain the instructions step by step. I say, get the topic, search the web, which is why it went immediately to the web for high ranking post articles, so on and so forth. At the end, if it's good, generate an image using the post. So that's why it asked me, like, is it good or you want to make any changes? And once I said it's good, it follows through and creates an image. And there are a couple of other things that I leverage. Okay, this is, if anybody remembers from the prompt engineering, I can give it all kinds of examples. And here I'm just giving one example of a good post that I liked. And there are some things that you can see. It's short, it's concise, it has kind of 3 points, and arguably you can see that it also has the hashtags. At the end of the day, it tries to emulate the examples that you give it. So this is just one example, but we can do many other things. We can upload files so that it's aware of things. Maybe you have a way of doing things in your company. You can upload them here. You can enable or disable web search. There's reasons for doing both. If you don't want it to access the internet because you're only interested in files that you've uploaded, then you want to untag this. You can enable canvas, which is a mode kind of for editing. You can enable image generation, which is what you saw just before. And there's also an ability to enable a code interpreter. Not going to go into that now, and also link it up to internal services, which is done by creating an action. I just want to show one more that I use quite a bit. This is the contract analyzer. And here I have, again, created a prompt that helps me generate a email that I will then, why is it not loading? That I can then immediately send to my lawyer. The reason for this is that I have many things to do, and sometimes I'll get a contract and I don't want to be something that stalls the process. I want to immediately try and kind of move it on to the lawyer. So I have this, and again, the task, I've given it the role, you are a meticulous lawyer, the instructions. Part of the instructions is figuring out if important points exist in the contract itself. And then I also let it know that these are what I consider important points. And then I also say, return the answer in the following format, which is, hi, name of the lawyer, please find the attached contract. Can you please make sure that it has the list of things? And if we just very quickly try to test this. So I am just doing basically nothing. I've just uploaded the contract. I didn't read it. It's a contract that is around 10 pages long, which I assume would take me a good 15-20 minutes to read. You can see that it's figuring out exactly what I wanted it to figure out. And in a second, you're going to see what I think is, again, if you recall, I said one of the most important things is getting an accelerated, validated, and uh, formatted output. And here you can see that it says, "Hi, Jonathan, please find the attached contract." Da, da, da. I can just take this, copy paste it into a mail. I'll change the name because this is kind of me. I want to send it to my lawyer. And I've accelerated the process. There's value in this. I'll be the first one to attest to it because I am the one who's using it on a daily basis. Great. Now, back to here. I've shown the demos. I just want to touch very briefly on how I think a process like this looks. It's not something that I believe, like, that you just tell the organization now use custom GPTs. They need to be accelerated, validated, and with a formatted output. We're well aware from the past year of doing these kind of processes with organization that it requires a change management process. And I think the following is true. It starts with training, not too dissimilar to this. My personal preference is also having a type of this session coupled with prompt engineering, coupled with a hands-on workshop. It moves forward to this kind of report that I'll show in a second. The report details what are all the possibilities within the organization. Normally, we sit with the stakeholders within the organizations and we map this out. Then you need some kind of a chat application. It can be any number of different ones. ChatGPT is just one of the options. Agents, general term for custom GPT. And I also recommend that you treat it as an ongoing change management process, and that kind of for me means that you have to always measure in the background. And I would argue a good target is 10% operational efficiency within a year. Yeah, so I've covered these things. At the end of the day, I think if you can find for yourself or for any function within your organization some kind of work that can reduce the workload by 4 hours a week, you'll be at a 10% increased efficiency. Companies that I've seen successful have, instead of allocating hiring budget, have allocated automation budget. I've seen very successful companies either leverage us or internally build kind of these SWAT teams, which go through this process with this target at mind. And that was what I wanted to talk about. I'm happy to take any questions if anybody has. Thank you very much.
All right. Thank you, Jonathan. Am I good here? Okay, sweet. All right. Does anybody have any questions? Yeah. All right. Hold on. I'm going to run the microphone over to you.
When it comes to feedback from deep research, how up to date is that information? In your example, when you're researching Tesla stock, is that Tesla stock as of last training model, which could be 2 years ago? Or is this pretty modern research?
The deep research has this whole process in the background that it does, and part of it is very excessively search for relevant, up-to-date sources online and try to kind of corroborate them. So it's not only relying on the model itself, which might be not updated to recent news. We don't exactly know how it operates. They don't say anywhere. You can just see when it's running, and having run it a couple of times, it relies very heavily on current stuff available on the internet.
All right, thank you. Any other questions? I'm curious if there's any creators you can recommend. You said for prompt engineering, there's a lot of great resources on the internet. Who should we be looking for, checking out for that?
To be honest, I don't use them because I've already learned how to prompt engineer quite a while back, and I also deliver those sessions. And I can't recommend my own session, which is on YouTube, but I'll send a couple of them, and you can send them to whoever's
Sure.
interested.
Awesome, thanks. Any other
Great,
questions?
guys.
I got one up front.
You talked a lot about the ChatGPT. Have you used other models with any success for any other tasks or?
Yeah, I didn't want to confuse too much, but there are definitely other alternatives. There's also Gemini, which is great. Their alternative is called Gems. There's also Anthropic company, which is pretty high up there, and they have their application, which is called Claude. There's also an option to have automations there. I think it's more about doing these automations than trying to have the best model. All of those things that I showed you, they don't require the best cutting edge model, or else they don't work. So we've seen success with a lot. Uh, most of the minor decision making processes, uh, any of them will do the task.
Awesome. Anything else? All right. I think that's everything we've got on our side. Thank you so much for doing this, Jonathan. We appreciate it.
Great, guys. Thank you very much for having me, and have a great rest of the day. And hopefully the weather starts shining.
Sounds good. Thanks. All
Great,
right, guys.
guys.
Thank you so much once again for being here. We really appreciate you coming out. If you didn't get the sign-in sheet, it's over in the area with pizza over there, if you wouldn't mind. That gets you connected to our future Lunch and Learn series. We'd love to have you guys back. I believe there's extra food left over as well. Please feel free to go back and grab some seconds. And feel free to hang out and network for a little bit. Thank you guys so much.